Is the wife of the defendant, and what an ordeal she has been through now, raising those two kids on her own. I have two guests joining me now here in New York. Tom Anelli is a criminal defense attorney. Great to see you again, Tom.
Good morning, Lisa.
And Jason Friedman is a former prosecutor, the other side of the aisle. Jason, welcome to the show as well.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, Tom, let me begin with you. We're looking at the defense of this case. One and only witness, the wife. I think the wife is a terrific witness. She humanizes the defense, but that's it?
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, Lisa. I mean, you put too many people on the stand and you start to try to excuse things, and this guy's already said he's done it. So
yeah, but the question is his state of mind. Don't we need to learn more to get him off of that aggravated murder top charge?
Yeah, but who are you going to put up to get the state of mind? That's the question.
How about a shrink?
Yeah, you could put up a shrink, but the bottom line, I think, is in looking at it, instead of offering scientific evidence, it'd be better to humanize him with his wife, talking about his children if possible, saying this guy's a loving father who cares for his kids. He works 2, sometimes 3 jobs. This guy is busting hump to provide for his family.
Yeah, and that's what we're hearing, and I appreciate that. I think she is a good witness. I guess I would just like to see a little bit more in this death penalty case. Although Jason Friedman, we all know the defense does not have an obligation to put on any witnesses whatsoever. They can simply challenge what the prosecution has done, argue reasonable doubt. Would that be enough here?
I don't know if that'll be enough. And just to comment quickly on the shrink issue, it's my understanding, or my guess, I would suppose, that they did have him examined by a psychologist in anticipation of possibly putting forth that as part of the defense. I don't think it panned out, obviously, which is why they didn't call a psychologist in support of the defendant.
Well, what about getting another shrink then? Finding somebody else? Surely they could find somebody to say he snapped. I mean, that's the defense in this case. Don't we need more than just the defense attorney saying that, Jason? I
would definitely agree with you, Lisa. I think the defense is very thin. Who knows? Maybe they went to 2, 3, 4 psychologists and they just couldn't get what they needed. Well, it's very possible that it's just not there to be had in terms of that psychiatric defense.
Tom Anelli, I noticed for his actions. Defense attorney Tom Anelli is still with us. I have a concern, though, that by putting so much focus on the noise next door, the fireworks that were being set off, this almost reeks of blaming the victims in this case.
I think it does reek of blaming the victim. I mean, here you have a guy who's working hard for his wife and family, and if his wife called the cops 12 times, there's probably instances, 5 times more than that of his kids being woke up. And here's a guy who's working 2 jobs, busting his tail to provide, and his kids aren't being taken care of because they're being woken up at night by this inconsideration. So I think you have to blame the victim if you're the defense, because it explains to the prosecution and the jury, if you will, that, here's a reason this guy would snap.
I don't know. I think you got to be careful, though. Jason Friedman, I don't care if Barnum and Bailey brings over their 3-ring circus into the front yard of the neighbors next door. It doesn't justify the kind of bloodletting that went on that night.
No question about it, Lisa. And it's, almost very disingenuous to assert the blame the victim defense, and I'm sure the family members are agonizing over that sort of intimation. But in fairness to the defense, I think they're just trying to paint a pattern to give an explanation to the jury as to why the defendant acted in the way he did. The real question here, Lisa, is what was going on in Mr. Hough's mind before he went outside? He was upstairs alone for a while. You don't know. Was the anger festering? Was he stewing while all the fireworks were going off? And there is the prior calculation, if in fact that happened.
And Jason, on the prosecution side, you can't argue that he doesn't take the stand. You can't mention that, mum's the word. The jurors are not supposed to think about it, although they surely will. Nobody knows what's going on in his mind except him. We don't have a psychologist. We don't have him. So I go back to, is this enough of a defense when the entire issue in this case is, was it premeditated or did he snap?
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and I think the psychologist would be very important here, because keep in mind, really, Regina Hough's credibility is a question here. She's going to do and say whatever she can to save the life of her husband, who's now facing the death penalty. By bringing in the psychologist, at least you're having a so-called objective third opinion, or other opinion about how, in fact, it works, how all of the prior bad encounters they had with the neighbors can lead up to him snapping on the day of the homicide.
Yeah, and Tom, what about this point that Jason raises that, well, Jason, premeditation can be formed in an instant. I mean, we say that all the time. That's the law everywhere. It doesn't have to be something thought through for a day or even an hour or even 5 minutes. Was there enough time here for premeditation to have been formed in the defendant's mind?
There's no question about it. I'm sure the judge is going to instruct the jury as to what premeditation means. And you're right, there is no sort of finite period of time. What was interesting, and I thought the most effective, what the defense just did, elicited from Regina Hough, was the time frame. Seconds went by from when he came downstairs till he went outside. Yeah. Seconds went by from when he went outside until the gunshots. So they're trying to paint it as a very, very narrow period of time to argue against premeditation.
Right, absolutely. Well, as we go to break, we want to update. Jason Friedman, if you were the prosecutor in this case, would you be this hard on the defendant's wife?
I might be a little softer with her, but I get what he's doing, and that is laying the groundwork to say, listen, these guns were all over the house, in the truck, in the house, ready to use. The idea is when you needed them, you had a loaded gun ready to use, and that's the key here. And so when he decided to take that gun in his hand, that was the prior calculation, and that's why, in my opinion, he should be found guilty of the aggravated murder.
All right, and you are both such fine attorneys, one on the defense side, one on the prosecution side. We are nearing the end of this case now, so I'm going to ask each of you for your final thought in this case. First, to criminal defense attorney Tom Anelli.
Lisa, I think it's ridiculous as this guy was found to have premeditated this thing. I think he was doing what he could to protect his family. Granted, some of his stuff was a little over the top, but I don't think he premeditated what he did. I think he got called out at the scene of this thing. This guy, he walks outside with a gun, and this punk kid says, you know, what are you going to do? Use that gun? Go back in your house. Stop being an idiot. And he calls the guy out, and he's, you know, puts him in an all-in situation.
Oh, boy. Jason Friedman for the prosecution.
No, I disagree with that. Notice every other time he went out in the prior instances, he went out and yelled. He didn't bring a gun with him. This time, he brings the gun out with him. And the reason he brought it out, and a clear inference that can be drawn, is because he intended to use it. At the moment he picked up that gun, before he went outside, that's when he formulated his prior calculation. He was going outside to use that gun. All
right. Great job to both of you. Big thanks to our guests, Tom Anelli and Jason Friedman, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Lisa.